Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Weidman.
This is Diego Sanchez, Randy Couture,
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio, episode 173. It's Wednesday, the 24th of October, and I know what you're thinking. This guy wearing a t-shirt and a hat, and must be nice and warm in Melbourne. Summer's coming up, but I have some breaking news. Still a bit chilly. Had to put on some socks. It was a little bit cold when I went and got some water in the middle of the night, and was a little bit nervous about the recording of this episode, so I've got some warm pants on. Welcome to an action-packed episode of Submission Radio. Dennis Graffey with Kasper Rozalowski ahead of UFC 230. A big episode of Submission Radio for the fans out there, Cass.
It is a sexy, action-packed episode. Before we get to the lineup, I agree with you about Melbourne weather teasing us. It was extremely nice and sunny over the weekend, people getting excited, and now, show day, recording day, goes back down to chilly. The dream of one day doing the show naked, pushed back for at least another few weeks. Maybe deep summer. Deep summer.
That's right. And what a time that will be when we start doing the show naked. A lot less guests and
a lot less
viewers, but the ones that stick around will surely be hardcore Submission Radio fans at that. Just a quick announcement for all you guys out there as well. We've had a great week back in Australia, back in Melbourne. It's great to be back here, back at home in Melbourne. A lot of fun stuff going on. And a big happy birthday to our very own Kasper Rozalowski. We had a fantastic weekend. We were able to celebrate your birthday with some close friends, Cass. Just wanted to let all the fans out there know that we're safe after a big night out at a place called Lucky Cock. Cock as in the bird.
C-O-K. C-O-Q.
C-O-Q down on Chapel Street. Had a fantastic night, a few drinks, and some great road stories from UFC 229 being shared, no doubt about it. A crazy event. So happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you for telling everyone. Thank you for letting everyone know that I'm becoming an old man. 29 years old. Can you believe it? I feel 16.
Well, you know, when I feel your skin, you definitely do. Tell me a little bit about the celebrations of the birthday. We had the big night out down in Chapel Street, but I saw you and your lovely girlfriend had a nice dinner. There was some celebrations apart from that. Fill us in.
Oh man, it was just a weekend of birthday dinners. It's funny, we got back from 229 and I'm like, cool man, diet back in swing, got to get shredded for summer. And it was just an endless barrage of these dinners, but I'm lucky, man. I'm blessed. They were all really nice dinners. My girlfriend took me to this place called Minamishima. It's in Richmond. It's in this little street. It is like one of the best, most expensive Japanese restaurants in Melbourne. It's crazy. You wouldn't even know that it exists. And you go in, it's like, it's really dark. It's low lit. It's very quiet in there. You're like, holy shit, where have I entered? Amazing sushi. They serve at body temperature, like 37 degrees. By far the best sushi and best Japanese food I've ever eaten in my life. Even the toilets were like crazy and secretive. The lady took me to the toilet. She's like, just down there to the right. I was like, cool. She's like, no, over here. And then she just pushes a wall and the wall opens and it's a toilet. I'm like, no way. She's like, secret. I was like, made the experience even better. So yeah, very appreciative. Presents, you're probably wondering? Cash is king. I got a lot of cash. That's all I need, especially after an expensive trip in Vegas. But yeah, I'm over my birthday. I'm glad it's done. I'm glad that I have another year before my next one. Don't have to worry or stress about it. I'm more excited for Halloween. And we're gonna be celebrating Halloween in a funny way, but we'll be announcing that in a second, right? In
a second. Oh, and just quickly as well, Earl McMillan had his birthday as well, and this is a guy that not many people out there will know of, but he was actually our first videographer when Submission Radio first started. A fantastic dude. We've been friends with him for quite some time. Had his 30th birthday as well. On the same night, played some fantastic music. Time Out Productions, they do a great thing. Earl Jam and Victorious Vic, they do an amazing job. So just a shout out to them, and yeah, just a lovely weekend with some friends celebrating birthdays. But Cass, you mentioned the big announcement. Before we get there, let's let the people know what they can expect from the show today. I mentioned it from the top. We have a pretty massive show for all the fans out there. Who's joining us on Submission Radio this week?
So Luke Rockhold is supposed to be scheduled to face Chris Weidman at UFC 230 just about a week from now. Unfortunately, the MMA gods were like, screw you guys, that's not happening. Unfortunately, he had to withdraw from the fight due to injury, but he is kind enough. He's a very, very kind man, that Luke Rockhold. Honestly, a super, super, super nice guy. Kind enough to join us on the program today. So we'll be chatting to him about the injury and sort of going into the details, what exactly that means for his return timeline. Is he even going to stay at middleweight? Is he maybe going to fast forward and fast track this light heavyweight move? Obviously, Weidman versus Jacare. There's a lot to talk to him about. Maybe touch on UFC 229, that brawl, DC versus Derrick Lewis. So I'm very excited to be speaking to Luke Rockhold about a whole bunch of things. Also, Colby Covington. It has been a minute since we've spoken to him, obviously since his aftermath at UFC 220. So I want to get a big update on him, get his thoughts on a whole bunch of things in the MMA world. Of course, Conor McGregor and Khabib and Tony Ferguson. Ben Askren saying that there is a 98% chance he'll sign with the UFC. What a fight that would be. So, Jon Jones is returning. Of course, we've got to get Colby's thoughts on that. Also, the man who signed a 4-year contract extension, the UFC's lead play-by-play commentator, man who does a phenomenal job, Jon Anik himself, will be joining us on the program. Of course, want to talk about that deal, his thoughts on the MMA world, the universe as it is, and also, he had some memorable moments at UFC 229, so of course, we've got to touch on that. It's a fun, sexy episode.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting to have these guys on. And I mean, Luke Rockhold, fantastic friend of the program, but a lot of these other guys as well, just great timing to have a chat with them and find out where they're at. You mentioned Jon Anik signing a contract extension. He's so great at his role. It's great to see him do it. And I'm just curious to hear more thoughts about how that all came together and the stuff behind that. But you mentioned a big announcement, and after a very fun trip to UFC 229 and you guys being so kind to us and so much great support, lovely messages on Twitter, lovely messages on Instagram, Facebook. You guys were way too kind to us, saying that you enjoyed the coverage and just different little aspects of the trip. We have been able to confirm that we are going up to New York, baby. That's right, Madison Square Garden. Next week, Submission Radio will be covering UFC 230. That's right. UFC 230 will be covered by us here at Submission Radio. We're jumping on a plane on Tuesday, right out of here in Melbourne, Australia. And I just want to mention something, Cass, before we get into what people can expect from the coverage, that a lot of it had to do with, well, we'll mention about how we're actually able to make it happen, but a lot of it had to do with you guys, the listeners, being so kind to us, telling us how much you enjoyed the content, and making us want to work really, really hard to get back over to the States and cover another event for you guys. And we thought, hey, why wait? The year's almost over. UFC 230, Madison Square Garden. I think we can make something happen here.
I'm very excited. I think as far as coverage, you guys can expect pretty much what you expected or what you saw at UFC 229. We'll be trying to get as many exclusives and fun interviews as possible. Of course, all the standard stuff, the press conferences, the media day, the weigh-ins, early weigh-ins, ceremonial, post-fight press conferences, post-fight scrums, everything. All the standard stuff that you've come to know and love, it'll be there. And we always feel like we are in a position where we have to try and top ourselves. Whether we will or we won't remains to be seen, but we'll be doing our absolute best, and we're thrilled, man. We're thrilled. I mean, a couple of guys flying out from Australia to cover the big show in New York. It's just it's an amazing opportunity, and we're glad that we're able to do it.
We were sort of doing a bit of a trial on our Instagram and decided to show you guys behind the scenes of our trip through there, through Instagram stories and different posts through there. And it was really successful. People really seemed to enjoy it. It was easier for us to capture the stuff on Instagram than if we still post stuff to Twitter, of course, and especially when it comes to coverage and Facebook. But if you guys do want to see the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm talking about stuff like me and Casper getting to our hotel, showing you guys the views from our balcony, taking you guys behind the scenes to the eateries that we're going to go to, or the hangouts we're going to have, the karaoke, of course. The Instagram followers got to see a lot more than a lot of the other people did on Twitter. All of that kind of stuff, or even the behind-the-scenes stuff of us shooting. And, I mean, it's New York after all. Me and Casper have a pretty packed itinerary when it comes to stuff that we're going to be doing outside of the Octagon, including Halloween being there, us having our first American Halloween. I think I had one. I did live in America for 1 year when I was super little, but I couldn't enjoy it. So this is going to be a big one. We've got plans to go to the Comedy Cellar As you guys know, we're huge comedy fans. So who we're going to run into? Are we going to chuck up some fun interviews on Instagram with some possible comedians? Also, some sports games happening around that time. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Of course, the catch-ups with all the MMA media members. That's at Submission Radio on Instagram. And I have to stress to everybody out there who does listen to our show through iTunes, Tune, and Stitcher, and we appreciate you guys subscribing to us and also the reviews that you guys leave for us. If you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, you will miss out, I would say, on about 99% of the content. So when you do get a chance, jump on YouTube and subscribe to the Submission Radio channel. We're getting kind of close to this 100,000 subscribers thing, and apparently we get a fancy plaque or something when that happens, so that's super exciting. But if you don't want to miss out on anything, jump on the YouTube channel. I would suggest that sort of from Wednesday on, if you're in America, sort of Wednesday, Thursday on, try and jump on there and check regularly to see what kind of content's up there. Basically, me and Cass, like he said, we've got the stuff planned out that the UFC have planned out for us, but we will be roving around with a little Submission Radio cam, and we will be getting exclusive content like always, trying our best at least. So make sure to check that out. There will be some... If you're looking at a steak, there'll be some side sauce on there for sure that you guys can dip your steak into. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff there as well.
Just quickly, Dennis, we're not doing this ourselves. We couldn't just go all the way to New York without some help. Who's helping us with this one?
Well, okay, so this is really exciting. As you guys know, we worked with Musashi leading into UFC 229. And I'm just quickly, very, 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 very quickly, before anything happened between Submission Radio and Musashi, I used to go to the gym, but I was too lazy to buy the premixes. And I would go to the shop and I'd buy my premix protein. And that's where my relationship with Musashi started, because I still stand behind the fact that some of the best tasting proteins out there. Anyway, we got in contact with these guys, and they've been able to support us going into a couple of events, UFC 214 and now UFC 229. But speaking to Ross and the team over there, they're more than happy to support us leading into a number of events. And this is how New York came together. Musashi, they sponsor guys like Robert Whittaker, and they're really helpful when it comes to supporting guys locally here in the fight scene and really sort of supporting the local businesses. And they want Submission Radio over at UFC 230. So thanks to them and them alone, we're able to go up to UFC 230 and bring this content to you guys. Now, I know I always mention this, and of course, this is somewhere everybody should go, musashi.com.au. You've got the BMI calculator. You've got all the different products. You can see some really cool Robert Whittaker merch and stuff like that. But I just want to quickly mention this, Cass, before we move on, because I've been using this heaps over the last few weeks. I use it before we do the show. It's right behind me right here, so I'm just going to quickly grab it. The Musashi Shred and Burn Protein. This bad boy has 20 grams of protein. It's mocha flavored. As you know me, Cass, I'm addicted to coffee lately. I can't stop drinking coffee. It basically powers me these days. And in UFC 229, I was down at Starbucks just like, does anybody want a coffee? Who wants a coffee? I'm getting another coffee.
You're like frying Futurama, just loaded on coffee, 300 coffees later.
Loaded on coffee. It didn't even do anything to me at one point. Anyway, the mocha flavored protein, it's fantastic. 20 grams of protein. It's got all the stuff that you need in there. It's not high in sugar. It's not high in carbs, but it also has caffeine in there. And I love this. So basically, at the start of my day, when I know I've got a big day coming up and I know I've got to take my protein, I have now been using this bad boy. It makes me feel really good, Cass, in the sense that, let me just put it back up here. It makes me feel really good in the sense that it gives me energy with the caffeine, but also makes me feel good about the fact that I'm putting a good protein into my body. Don't have to worry about, as you know, with some of these mixes, 20, 30 grams of sugar per shaker. So it's a fantastic mix. It's one of the latest products I use from Musashi, and you can keep an eye on all the other Musashi products we'll be using on our trip over to New York. I know at UFC 229, you were destroying those Marshmallow Rocky Road protein bars, absolutely loving those. And I have been destroying the delicious protein wafers that they have, which is just a little extra thing that I'll be talking to you guys coming up in the next few weeks. And they are perfect to take on a long trip with you, especially when you're in the plane. And by the way, we flew with United up to UFC 229. I'm happy they're not our sponsor because, god damn, that was some rough food that they were serving us. At one point, we got served half a sandwich. That's right, half.
Yeah, where's the other
sandwich
half?
They gave us. It was cold, disgusting, and the lady wasn't very happy when I asked where the other part of my sandwich went. It was microwaved meals, but if the microwave was broken and the meals were outdated, so the protein bars definitely held us in good stead going all the way over to America. It's going to be a longer trip over to New York, and of course, we're not flying first class over there by any means, so we'll be dealing with some rough meals yet again, and Musashi will help us get through the flight. And of course, during fight day, a couple of protein shakes make us ask all the good questions. So make sure to check out musashi.com.au. A big thank you to Ross and the team for supporting us, Cass.
And a massive thank you. It's interesting because we're talking about title fights, obviously Derrick Lewis and DC, and UFC 229, Conor and Khabib. While we're talking about flights, there's obviously another world champion stepping into the octagon. Of course, we're talking about our good friends at AirAsia. It is the world's best low-cost airline, as awarded by the Skytrax Awards for 10 years running. They are official partner of the UFC. You saw the lovely ladies of AirAsia at the UFC 229 weigh-ins. They can fly you to 130 destinations. So if you want to do some jiu-jitsu in Japan, some Muay Thai in Thailand, you can do some Wing Chun in China. Asia is obviously the heaven for mixed martial arts and martial arts fans. You can check out One Championship. AirAsia connects you to over 130 destinations across Asia. I'm actually going to Japan in January with my girlfriend, and guess who we're flying with? Of course, AirAsia, and we're going to Hong Kong as well, so that's going to be great. They also support rising stars such as Jimmy Crute, who they helped get all the way from Australia to America, where he's won his fight and on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, and obviously we're going to be expecting big things from him. So a massive, massive thank you to them for supporting us at UFC 229 and powering our UFC 229 coverage. Obviously looking forward to working with them somewhere in the near future as well.
That's right, Cass. A fantastic company, and hopefully we can work with them one day in the future. And of course, check out Musashi leading into UFC 230. But as we wrap up the intro, I just want to quickly remind everybody out there, if you guys haven't subscribed on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, why not jump on, subscribe, have a listen. Make sure you don't miss out on any of the latest Submission Radio episodes. And also on Twitter, follow us at SubmissionAUS. Of course, on Facebook, give us a like. And if you guys have a message or anything that you want to say to us, of course, our DMs are open to slide right in, of course, on Instagram as well. And I'm saying, of course, a lot, so I'm going to say it one more time. And, of course, on Facebook, jump on and send us a message. We get a lot of messages from you guys, and we sort of see it as a Submission Radio family. We love to respond to you guys. From time to time, we can't do it right away, but those messages are there. We do both read them, and we do get back to you guys as soon as we can. So thank you so much for the support. But, Cass, like you mentioned, big show of Submission Radio coming right up. We have our first guest on the line. He's ready to go, and you're about to introduce him.
All right, guys. Our next guest is one of the UFC's biggest personalities, as well as the UFC's interim welterweight champion. He is known as the Great American Winning Machine, and he joins us back here on the program, Colby Chaos Covington. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you today, man? We see you got a brand new shirt. What's going on here?
Yeah, I got a brand new shirt. One of my most loyal fans sent it to me. You know, since I'm an American patriot, you know, and not a snowflake pussy like the shirt says. You know, I got to rep the brand.
Well, it's been a little while since we last heard from you. So tell us, what have you been up to in the last few weeks since the aftermath of UFC 228?
Oh, you know, the same thing I've been doing my whole life. You know, I'm getting paid and I'm getting laid. So, you know, I've just been enjoying South Florida. I've been on my victory tour still, you know, celebrating MAGA, celebrating my world championship, and just being a winner. You know, every day I wake up, I get a little bit richer. I get a new chick. So I'm living the American dream.
We saw on your Instagram you were doing a video, I think, for a betting website, and it was you laying down, and I noticed, oh yeah, that's Colby. I recognize him. And then there was a big ass in the background, a big ass in a thong. Whose ass was that, Colby?
Oh, that was just one of my weekday fucks. You know, just a girl, you know, I hooked up with. I said, hey, you want to get famous? You want to get your ass famous for a night? So, you know, I put her on my Instagram real quick, you know, had to promote and do some marketing for UFC 229 between the sheep fucker Khabib versus that drunk Irish midget, whatever his name is, Connor or something like that. So, you know, I was just having a good time.
Well, tell us, what did you think of that fight, the UFC 229 main event? What were your thoughts on it?
That was kind of what I expected. We all know that Connor's kind of been protected. He's never fought a wrestler. You know, he's kind of one-dimensional. You know, he's decent on the feet. You know, he's knocked some guys out, but, you know, he's not a well-rounded fighter. He doesn't have wrestling. He doesn't have grappling. So, you know, I expected that. I knew he gasses in fights, and Khabib's one-dimensional. All he can do is wrestle. So, you know, everybody was, you know, was Khabib, you know, going to be able to take down Connor, or was Connor going to knock him out first? But, you know, I knew Khabib was just going to take him down and just get him tired and then finish him, and that's what he did.
People not sure how long Khabib's going to stay at lightweight. Obviously, he has issues with his weight cuts, and maybe one day he'll move up to welterweight. If he did move up to welterweight, how do you think Khabib would do against guys like you and guys like Tyron Woodley?
He doesn't stand a chance against a guy like me, I can tell you that. And that's the reason he's cutting all that weight to go to lightweight. He knows he has no chance to win at welterweight. You know, there's guys like me who can wrestle back into him and who can strike and do jiu-jitsu and get up off the bottom. So, you know, it's a completely different fight. And that's why he cuts all that weight, you know, to go to lightweight. He's scared of welterweight. So, you know, after I finish dunking my balls on Tyron Woodley and finishing his career off, I'll be looking for that fight. You know, if he wants to meet in the middle, you know, I'm not a big 170, so we can meet right in the middle, 162. Right in the middle, 155, 170. We can do the super fight, 162. But, you know, I have a feeling he's going to get scared and he's going to back out, and his dad's going to tell him to retire before he fights me.
I was wondering, what did you think of the brawl afterwards? Him jumping out and getting in a fight with Dylan Dennis and people jumping in and attacking Conor McGregor. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought that was a complete joke. You know, I mean, he conducted himself like a filthy animal. You know, he set the sport back 20 years. You know, there's no reason you jump out of a cage. You know, that's why there's commissions, and you're a professional. That guy just made you more money in one fight than you're ever going to make for all your fights combined. So you should be kissing that guy's feet. You should be thanking him for putting all that money in your bank account. And what do you go do? You shame on the sport. So, you know, that's why I call him a sheep fucker. And there's no lie in that. You know, I got banned from Twitter for like 2 weeks for calling him a sheep fucker. So
Really?
You know, but 20,000 people. Yeah, but 20,000 people agreed with me. You know, they liked that tweet. There was like 6,000 retweets, and then all the soft liberals that run Twitter, they put me on a ban on Twitter. So, you know, I had to end up deleting the tweet, you know, which is bullshit. You know, we're in America. This is freedom of speech. How am I getting my tweets deleted and, you know, for my freedom of speech? And, you know, they said it's hate speech, but, you know, we're in the fight business. I'm building a fight. I'm saying fighting words because I want to fight a guy. So, you know, it didn't make any sense. And all the soft snowflake liberal pussies on Twitter, you know, they need to chill the fuck out.
Wow. I can't believe Twitter would do that. I mean, I can, but I'm disappointed in Twitter. I don't think they understand fight promotion. Speaking of fights, obviously the fight that everybody wanted to see was you versus Tyron Woodley. The UFC didn't want to wait until you were healthy. What is your health at now, Colby? How is sort of everything healed up for you?
Yeah, I'm almost back to 100% health. I was ready to go November 7th for Madison Square Garden. I was ready to make the Garden great again against Woodley, but, you know, he tucked his tail between his legs and he went running for the foothills like the little pussy that he is. He's out here faking injuries again. Last time we were supposed to fight, it was a shoulder injury. Now he's faking a thumb injury. So, you know, I'm ready to go, man. I'm at full health, you know, and I'm ready to go whenever they want to make the fight. But, you know, now we got to wait for Woodley to do his little TMZ bullshit where he's talking about, you know, what Kardashian's bathing suits they're going to wear on which week. And he's out here making these fucking whack-ass rap albums. I'll eat your ass. Like, what a joke, man. You guys listen. If you listen to that guy, it's just a joke, man. Like, you know, like you could probably do a better rap album than him.
Has the UFC spoken to you at all about possible dates when Woodley might be healthy? Have they been in touch with you whatsoever?
No, I haven't heard anything. You know, from what I know, and I let them know. You know, I mean, Super Bowl weekend, it needs to happen. This is the biggest fight that the UFC can put together for a title fight right now that hasn't been booked. So, you know, it only makes sense to put it on one of the biggest weekends of the year, Super Bowl weekend in Vegas.
Just for all any Aussie and New Zealand listeners, the ones that may not follow the NFL, when roughly month-wise is Super Bowl weekend?
Super Bowl weekend is the first weekend in February.
See, that will be a fun one. Just quickly, was there any truth to you potentially fighting Nick Diaz at UFC 230 or the UFC trying to put that fight together?
Yeah, there was a lot of truth to it. They were talking to it. They were talking about it, putting that fight together behind the scenes so we could save the Garden, you know, be in the main event, put the two brothers on the same show. You know, there would have been a lot of history there, but, you know, at the end of the day, Nick got scared. You know, he started coming out acting like, you know, fronting like he's this gangster and that he's ready to fight. He'll fight anybody. He's from the hood. He's 209's finest and shit. But as soon as my name got brought up, you know, he got scared and he went back into hiding like he does, you know. I don't think Nick wants to fight anymore. I think his career's over. He's not going to fight ever again. He's just, every time he comes out and says he wants to fight this and that, he's just using that to stay in the spotlight. He's using that to get headlines. He's using that to, you know, keep the promotion, keep the hype up so he can get a couple social media followers, which is bullshit. So, you know, I don't think that guy wants to fight again. He's a little diva.
But that is a fight that you would like, correct? If the UFC could put that fight together, that's something you would love, right?
Yeah, I would love that fight. It's an easy fight. It's an easy stylistic fight. I'll fight that guy any fight form there is possible. Bare knuckle. If Zuffa wants to do a boxing match, that guy's a joke. He's past his time. The only thing he's beating up these days is 115-pound women.
I was gonna say, it's crazy because the UFC, it's no secret that they've struggled to fill this UFC 230 card. Obviously, we had Diaz on there at one point, Nate Diaz. That fell through. They sort of rushed to put in Derrick Lewis against DC, both guys who aren't exactly 100%. In hindsight, do you think they made a mistake by not having you versus Tyron Woodley, especially in a place like New York, obviously with the support of Donald Trump for yourself, Tyron Woodley sort of coming in there? I feel like it was the perfect recipe rather than sort of rushing Darren Till to that title shot. Do you think they made a mistake and they should have just waited?
Yeah, I think they did make a mistake. I think they tried to rush it. They felt like they were in a bind. They wanted to make money on that Dallas show on pay-per-view, and they got bills to pay. They got the $4 billion installment, the loan installments they got to pay back on that loan that they got to buy the UFC. So I understand that's an expensive ticket. So they're going to be scrambled and rushed to fill every pay-per-view with the best fights that they can fill. So, I understand. But, all the history that was going to happen at the Garden, I had the Trump family reaching out to me saying that they wanted to go to the Garden and they were going to be right down the street in New York if I fought. So, it sucks, man. It was going to be a big event, and, it's the biggest event of the year at the Garden. And, Hulkamania started at the Garden. So, it only made sense that I was going to go there and make the Garden great again. But, the reason it didn't come together is because Woodley's, out here faking injuries. After his fight with Till, he said he was 100% healthy. He went to the shower. He got ready. He went to the press conference a couple hours later. He says, hey, I'm 100% healthy. I'm ready to fight Colby. I'll fight Colby at the Garden. But then as soon as the UFC started telling him he was going to have to fight, then he got scared. He wanted more money because he knows I'm going to end his career and I'm going to finish off his career. So he wants to get the most money possible. So I think the negotiations went bad with that. And then he's like tucked his head under his tail and he said, I'm out the rest of the year. I can't fight till next year. So that's why we're at where we're at now. And I got to wait till next year to fight him. It kind of sucks.
You mentioned that some of the Trump family reached out to you and were excited to see you at Madison Square Garden. Which members of the Trump family have been in contact with you?
I've spoken to Donald Trump Jr., his son, multiple times. So we've been in contact, and he was really excited. He wanted to come out and support me in the Garden in New York. It's right down the street from Washington, D.C. So it's unfortunate. It was going to be a great day. This fight has got such great build-up, just the size, the angles, everything. I've been building this fight up for years. So, the thing is Tyron doesn't know how to promote and sell a fight. But it's okay. I could sell a fight with a mop. But, by the way, that mop would have more charisma than Tyron Woodley. So this fight has a lot of different angles. It's going to go, the Republican versus the liberals, the red versus blue. I mean, it's just this fight had New York written all over it. And it just sucks that I couldn't go back to the Garden and make it great again.
I think that's the fight that should have happened. I was going to say, though, it was sort of an understanding that because Till versus Woodley was happening, certain things would happen with your interim belt. But what do you make of the fact that the official UFC website still lists you as the current interim welterweight champion?
I think they got it right. I just fought and won that title. A couple months ago, 4 months ago to be exact. So, I think the UFC did right. They know I'm the rightful champion. We got to unify those belts, and it's going to be a huge fight. I think they made the right call. I had a legit surgery I had to get taken care of. I had a sinus surgery, a deviated septum, and I had to get a sinus surgery. So I had to get the nose and all that clearing out so I could start breathing good again. And Woodley wanted to mock me. He wanted to say that, that I didn't need to get that surgery, but this surgery was very important. I had a lot of mucus build up in my nose, and it was going to my lungs, so I couldn't breathe very good. And I fought like that, in the Damian Maia fight and in the RDA fight, so I wasn't at 100%. But back then, the risk to reward equated. Now I'm fighting for a different set of goals, and it's a different paycheck, and everything's different. So, you know, I want to make sure I'm 100% healthy for that. I'm not going to rush into this fight at that time. So, you know, it was important that I got the sinus surgery, but that's cleared up. It's behind me. I'm healthy, and I'm ready to get back to work now. I'm ready to drain the swamp, just like Donald Trump's doing. He's draining the swamp, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drain the swamp that is the welterweight division, and I'm going to make it great again.
Speaking of the welterweight division, and a little side note, Ben Askren recently tweeted out that there's 90% chance that he signs with the UFC. How would you see a fight against Askren at some point? Obviously, he's a great wrestler as well.
He's a jobber. He has a padded record. He hasn't fought anybody. You know, if he comes over to the UFC, you know, let him work his way up. He's got to earn his way up. You know, he hasn't done anything worthy. But the guy's a joke, man. I mean, he's not on my level. He knows it. He wants to say these things. He's old. He's past his time too, man. I mean, this is my time now. All these guys know it. That's why all these guys want to fight me now, because they know it's my time. And when they lose to me, it's going to be the biggest paycheck they ever get to lose to me. So, you know, Ben Askren's a joke, man. The guy has no skills. He hasn't hurt a fly in 10 years. I mean, he was like in Mount on the Russian for 5 rounds and didn't put one scratch on the guy's face. So, I mean, the guy can't strike. He's scared to strike. I mean, it's an easy fight, but he's got a padded record, so we'll see what happens.
I think regardless, you and him would be a very fun matchup for the fans at some point, if it were to ever happen. Also got to ask, there is a man who you share a long and storied history with, and that's, of course, Jon Jones. He officially returns at UFC 232 against Alexander Gustafsson. Got to ask you, man, what did you think of the deal he got from USADA and his alleged cooperation to get such a deal?
He's a snitch. The biggest golden snitch there is, man. Jon Jones, the biggest fuck up in all professional sports. What a complete joke he is, man. Snitching out, ratting out people just so he could get a reduced sentence. That guy should be ashamed of himself. I mean, the guy's a cheater as it is. He's failed 2 steroid tests. His brothers have failed steroid tests for performance-enhancing drug tests in the NFL. So that tells what type of character their whole family has. They're all cheaters. They're all cowards. And now they're rats. They're snitching on people so they get reduced sentences. The guy should be ashamed of himself. If I was Jon Jones, I wouldn't show my face in the MMA world again. The guy made a complete joke of himself, and Alexander Gustafsson's probably going to leave him unconscious now he's not got his juice in the octagon.
Well, I was going to say, what kind of Jon Jones do you think we see when he returns in December?
I don't think we see a very good one. I think we see one that is defeated, one that's coming back just for a paycheck, one that, you know, doesn't have the juice in his body anymore to give that extra kick, to give that extra power, you know, to have that extra speed. He's not going to be the same Jon Jones, you know. He's not the greatest of all time. That guy's the biggest fuck up of all time. That's all he is. So, you know, he's stepped on his own toes, man. You know, look at what he's done. Look at his career. Look at his resume of the shit that's on his, you know, he should be in jail still. Is he out of jail yet? Where is he at right now? Like, that guy's a fuck up. So, you know, I don't think we'll see much from him in December. I think we'll see a guy looking to get a paycheck, and that'll probably be his last fight.
From a fan's perspective, DC versus Lesnar or DC versus Jon Jones 3? What sort of tickles your fancy more, Colby? What would you rather see?
I'd rather see DC versus Lesnar. I think DC is the natty GOAT, you know, the natural greatest of all time. No doubt about it. He's never failed those steroid tests. He's never hit no people in the Bentley with hookers in the back while his wife and kids were at home. He's never hit some pregnant lady in an intersection and then ran from the crime scene with all his drugs and money. So the guy's, you know, he's a class act. DC deserves a big fight, and Lesnar is that big fight. Lesnar's a former champion, you know, a WWE champion, a world champion. He's a great fighter, a great American fighter, and I think they should go to war. I don't think that Jon Jones should be rewarded for his stupidity and being the biggest fuck up in all professional sports. That guy doesn't deserve anything. All he deserves is to fucking go read his tweets in jail cells.
Well, just quickly, as we let you go, Colby, obviously it's always fun chatting with you, but what's on the horizon for you sort of in the near future while you wait for this fight with Tyron Woodley to get booked? I know you said you're aiming for possibly Super Bowl weekend, early February. How are your holidays looking, and what are you going to get up to in the meantime?
Yeah, I'm going to do what I do best, you know, slay women, get a new girl for every day of the week. I got to have my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday set up. So, you know, I like diversity and flavor. So, you know, I mix it up. You know, I got a wide variety of chicks, all shapes and sizes. So, you know, I got to stay up on my chicks. I get richer every day I wake up. I get a little bit more wealthy. I got sponsors coming out of the ass now. Everybody wants to jump on the Colby bandwagon now. So, I'm just going to keep doing what I do. Keep, training, keep better than it's ever been. I'm just proud to be an American, and I'm grateful to this great country.
Well, if there's one thing clear, it is that we are living the wrong life, man. We need to get some of that Colby Covington love, and get some more girls. Get some more girls during the week. There you go, guys. Follow them out on Twitter and Instagram at ColbyCovMMA. We know there's always great T-shirts to get, so check those out as well. And it's always fun chatting with you, Colby, man. Always appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much, and we hope this big fight gets booked. Need to see it already.
I know it needs to happen already. I've been talking about it, and now it's time for it to happen. So, I'm gonna put on a good show for you guys. I'm gonna send that little soy boy Woodley out to pasture. I'm gonna retire him. We're never gonna have to hear his boring shit ever again. That everybody hates me because they're racist. No, they hate you because you don't fight, and you have some of the worst fights in the UFC history. So least strikes thrown in a title fight ever. That's the only history that Woodley will ever be known for. So it's gonna happen soon, guys. I'm gonna retire that filthy animal.
Thank you so much, Colby. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Hey, this is Tony Ferguson, and you guys listen to Submission Radio. Keep tuning in, guys.
All right, guys. Well, this is a special treat. This guy is a former UFC and Strikeforce champion, one of our favorite guys to talk to on the program. Luke Rockhold, welcome back to Submission Radio. And this is a pretty cool view as well. Luke Rockhold sort of cruising the streets. Whereabouts are you cruising right now, Luke? Where are you located right now?
I'm going to have some dinner.
Oh, dinner. Oh,
joining my friends for dinner.
Very nice, very nice. Awesome. Well, look, we really appreciate you jumping on the show, especially while you're on the way to dinner. And during this difficult period, obviously it's been a number of days since the news broke that you officially had to withdraw from UFC 230 and the fight against Chris Weidman. Tell us, how you doing, man? It must be incredibly tough at this time.
It was a tough one to accept, but that's why you have a coaching staff and good people around you to kind of guide you in the right way, man. I did not want to accept this fight going away. I wanted it, every fucking inch of it. And so I tried everything I could, but unfortunately, it's just too much to work around. I got to be able to walk into Madison Square Garden. I can't crawl.
Yeah, okay, so let's break this down, because when Ariel reported this, he said there were a number of issues, a number of injuries that you were sort of dealing with. Can you sort of break down to us the sort of timeline of things that went wrong in this training camp?
So, man, it was the leg injury has been a fucking nightmare, a complete nightmare. It was a misinformed surgery. Unfortunately, I was misguided by a couple doctors, and I wouldn't say malpractice, but it was a pretty idiotic move to open me up on the blade of my shin where they did, and everything I've learned thus far. It seemed like a superficial surgery, and that's why I went ahead with it, and sure enough, it's been one of the worst things I've ever dealt with in my life. So it's non. I really can't make any contact with it. It's on the blade of my shin, and it's such a it's like I was in jeopardy of so many things with this leg, and it's repercussions if I were to go out there and this thing open up and the infection get to the bone. It's just not worth it. I was working around. I didn't kick the whole camp. I didn't use my left leg to kick, and so unfortunately, after Vegas, I got an infection on the way back home. Something, and then as I thought the leg was doing better and it would be ready to go, and it backtracked and opened up, and it was in jeopardy again. It was red, it was inflamed, and it was dangerous because it's the skin has to build up. So anyway, I'm trying to heal that up, and I broke my nose in a grappling exchange. I got caught with a wild elbow, and so I was working around both those, man. It was just too many things, and then come on top of that, I'm switching my stance to work with that, and sparring with a cage around my face, and ended up spraining my knee, trying to force that. And so I think it was a sign in the end, and I wanted to work around every angle I could, but this is that was it. That was the last straw, and the coach have been trying to push me out of this fight for some time, and come the sprained knee, it was a sign. I don't think it's much of anything. It's going to be 2-3 weeks, but for the knee, but everything else needs significant time to heal.
So leading into the sprain, do you think if it didn't happen, there's a good chance you'd still be fighting on basically one leg and a broken nose next weekend? If that sprain didn't happen, do you think you would have still fought?
That was the plan.
Wow. So your coaches during this whole time were trying to get you to pull out. What was it about the sprain that finally let you accept what they were sort of telling you? And sort of what went through your mind when that sprain happened? I mean, it seems like you were fighting pretty hard all these weeks to make it to this fight. Was it just the straw that broke the camel's back? Tell us about what mentally what was going through your mind when you got that sprain.
I couldn't walk for 3 days.
Wow.
So, limping around and not being able to train, it was pretty much it. You know, I couldn't use my left leg. I couldn't engage with my fucking nose, and I couldn't walk. So, between the three of them, I think it was a pretty obvious choice. I needed to make a call.
Yeah, and especially how you mentioned the potential repercussions of fighting, and going through with that leg, and you mentioning you not throwing any left leg kicks, which is crazy because it's one of your biggest weapons. Don't want to bum you out here, Luke, but obviously there have been tough times in your career. We remember you were supposed to fight over in Melbourne a few years ago against Jacare in a rematch. That was a sort of tough time in your life. And sort of looking at this one, we know you wanted to fight Chris, MSG. Not only that, fighting on the same card as DC, that would have been really special. Is it sort of, would you say this is probably one of the most, if not the most difficult fight withdrawals that you've sort of had to experience of your career?
Yeah, this one sucked. I didn't want to let this one go. I knew I could. I beat Chris Weidman on one leg last time. I was ready to do it again. I know Chris well, and I know his game, and I know it took a lot. It took a lot to step back from this fight. I gotta tell you that, but I gotta honor myself in this game and go forward with what I have. So there's a number of things I need to recorrect, and I gotta get my body right early on in camp. If I want to do this thing in middleweight, I gotta the stress of making weight later in camp is taking its toll on my body, and I gotta stay strong there, and if not, also I can jump back and forth pretty. We'll see what happens. There's quite a few fights in the next couple weeks, so I'm sure we'll be able to make a judgment call here soon.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I know you told us that it took quite a bit for you to go back down to middleweight. It took Madison Square Garden, right? And it took the fight with Chris Weidman. Now Weidman is fighting Jacare, and who knows what the next sort of fight that would be offered to you in middleweight would be. What do you think it would take you to go back down to middleweight? Would it be a special set of circumstances yet again?
It's a big, I don't know, it's a fight. The fight's a fight. I've got my mind kind of set on it, but I can get straight if something presents itself. We'll see what comes out. I mean, Jacare and Chris Weidman, I've had beat the brakes off both of them. We'll see who comes up on top and where they fall. I think Weidman's gonna bitch and complain and wait around for a title fight again, like he's been talking, like he deserves when he's won in his last 4 fights or something like that. So,
if Jacare beats Weidman here, would you still be interested in going back down to middleweight and possibly fighting Jacare instead of Weidman?
I wouldn't mind it. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But if Jacare beats him, I just don't. I don't know. We'll see. Jacare seemingly is he's a little stiffer, a little slower these days, but he's still powerful. He could catch him, but he seems a bit slower. So I don't know what to expect from Weidman. He looked good his last fight, but hit or miss. I think when he's out there, he's always tough, but he doesn't adjust well. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Just to clarify, Luke, so timeline-wise, I know it's early days. When roughly do you think it will be likely that we'd see you return? I'm assuming sometime early next year?
Next year? We'll see, man. I'm in shape. I don't want to lose it. You know, I've done so much to get to this point, and so I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna honor my body. I'm gonna be beyond my diet and take care of my body, cross train, and I just gotta avoid contact. No contact with the leg. We're gonna go week by week, but you know, assuming it's gonna have at least a month they want of no contact, and that's the same for my nose really, and it's not gonna hurt my knee either. So I think a month between all these things, if I'd really just focus and not set myself back, I should be back in the heat of things. And so I think there's a chance if something plays out, December 29th is not a bad idea. And,
oh, wow.
And then I know there's a big card come the beginning of the year. There's a big card, I believe, on ESPN, something like that back in New York. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But I'll be on my game. I'll be doing my thing, and I'm not looking to take much time off. I'm trying to just get through this leg, and like I said, I gotta really let this thing heal. And is when I know I can trust this thing and kick with it and train with it, then I can start a training camp and commit to a fight.
The December 29th card, that's especially an interesting one because that one's headlined by Jon Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. Is that a card that you're sort of looking at because if you do choose to go to light heavyweight, it could be a good idea to sort of co-main event under those guys?
I like the way your mind works.
Just tell Chris Cyborg and Amanda Nunes, hey guys, step aside. Someone's coming. Someone's coming at 205. But is that kind of part of the motivation for you to sort of, you know, be on that same card as Jon Jones, make a statement?
We'll see what happens in the next couple weeks. There's a couple fights, and so we'll see where I stray. You know, I think it depends on everything else. It depends on Madison Square Garden, and eventually, you know, so we'll see. There's other fights in line, so.
I think another aspect of it is you're sort of probably waiting to see if Daniel Cormier is legitimately stripped of his light heavyweight title or not, because from what we understand, if he loses this fight next weekend, apparently he might still be holding on to that light heavyweight title. Is that one of the sort of factors as well that you're looking to look at to see what eventually does happen with Daniel before you move up to the division?
DC's not losing next week, and DC's not coming back to light heavyweight. Plain and simple.
So it's official, because I feel like this is the clarity that we've been waiting for. We all sort of suspected it right from Luke Rockhold. Number 205.
Hey, I know DC better than he knows himself sometimes.
Yeah.
He's not coming back to light heavyweight. I'm not going to let him. He's a better heavyweight. He's always been a better heavyweight. Yeah, heavyweights, they're not athletes. They rely on their power, and DC with his size and his athleticism, he can dominate. There's a very few heavyweight. There's a couple heavyweights at the top that are technical, that are good. You know, how many heavyweights can be a top contender in the world off, you know, that have been born into martial arts and training and wrestling? I mean, every other sport, every other division in the world has to have a lifelong practice. There's heavyweights that are contenders off 5 years of training. It's DC will neutralize, and he'll own that division for now, for the time being.
He's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, not only as an athlete, but just skill set wise, and when you factor in his age, he's phenomenal. What would you rather see him next? What would you let him do, Luke? Would you rather see him do the Lesnar fight or the Jon Jones 3 fight, potentially at heavyweight? Because it seems like the UFC wanted to do potentially Jones Cormier 3, but they both wanted to do it at 205.
If DC fights Jones, he's doing it at heavyweight. I've already told him that.
Yeah.
That's where it needs to happen. I think that's where everyone wants to see it happen. So that's where it's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you something, because there's a few questions around DC and sort of how he is going into this fight next weekend. Obviously, we know Derrick Lewis took a massive beating at UFC 229. You and us were all there. We saw the fight. With Daniel, there were rumors of potentially some kind of hand injury and him not getting a proper training camp going into this fight. What kind of Daniel Cormier do you believe we'll see come next weekend?
You're gonna see the best of Daniel Cormier. He's gonna be on his game.
Mm.
I can't speak for Derrick Lewis, but I know DC's gonna be in shape and he's gonna be ready. He's not taking anything lightly. He's gonna train like he always trains, but we'll see how it all plays out. But it's a good fight. We'll see. Derrick Lewis is a tough bastard, but he's dealing with a different kind of athlete. He's not. DC is so much faster than those guys. I don't think Derrick can find him in any way. So we'll see. We'll see if he can get up.
It's crazy. It's crazy the way Derrick Lewis just sort of comes back and has these insane comeback wins. Just quickly, because the last time we saw you, you were there. You told us you were wearing all black. Conor McGregor's funeral. We saw you in 229, and then later that night, the craziness happened. Didn't get a chance to speak to you afterwards, but just from your perspective, what do you remember from that night and everything that transpired after Khabib beat Conor McGregor and defended the belt?
I remember a great fight.
And
another fight to follow. I mean, you guys all saw it for yourselves. It ain't any different than how I saw it. So I think people blow out of proportion what Khabib did, and Conor gets away with everything. So I mean, he's slick, and Khabib and the boys are a bit lost in translation, but you have to respect them, their religion, their everything. The promotion went overboard, and Khabib's the champ, man, and he handled his business. He got even by some means.
If you had to sort of look at what was next for him, would you like to see a rematch between him and Conor, or this Tony Ferguson fight? Because this is the big debate going on right now. Which fight is more exciting for people to see?
I'll let Khabib make his decision and go ahead with his paycheck. So we'll see. We'll see how it all works out. I don't think it was that close. I think Tony's proved himself to be up there, so we'll see. Both are somewhat intriguing.
I think that Tony Ferguson fight, oh my God, we need to see that at some point. For the MMA guys, they could just...
Tony's well. Maybe, how about Tony and Conor too?
Yeah.
Well, it seems like he's open to it after his latest social media post. Just quickly, Luke, we know you're off the card, but obviously Madison Square Garden and your best friend is fighting in the main event. Are you still planning to go to New York next weekend and support DC and sort of be there to see this Chris Weidman, Jacare fight in person?
There's a good chance.
Has the outfit been picked out? Got to ask that, because last time when DC fought Lesnar, I think there were two big stories: DC versus Lesnar and Luke Rockhold's outfit.
Well, we are in New York, so if I do show up, we'll see. That is Ralph Lauren territory, so
exactly.
I have to step up my game. No, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it all goes. I don't know if I'm going to make it out, but I expect a short night at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, there you go. First round potentially, DC versus Derrick.
I think it's if not the first, the second.
Well, it's going to be exciting. Mm-hmm. It's going to be exciting, Luke. We'll be there. If you're going to be there, don't dress too nice. Please don't outstage us. Can't have that happening again. But we'll let you go. Obviously, you're on the way to dinner. We see it's a blue sky, man. So things are looking good. Obviously, guys, make sure to follow Luke on Twitter at Luke Rockhold. We wish you a speedy recovery and also get behind one of Luke's companies. It actually made CNBC's most promising 100 startups list, which is a fantastic achievement. You can follow it at Opkix. OPKIX. They are the makers of the smaller and most powerful little camera. We had a look at it recently and very excited about that. So, Luke, in this tough time, I really appreciate you jumping on the show and chatting with us. Always fun. Always appreciate it.
Check it out. Opkix. I'm going to take over the GoPro world. It's another level. Another level. Promise you that. Keep your eyes peeled. Opkix is going to take over.
Thank you so much again, Luke. Really appreciate it. Enjoy your dinner.
Cheers.
This is TJ Dillashaw, UFC champ. Listen to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is the UFC's lead play-by-play commentator and recently signed a 4-year contract extension that will see him continue his excellent work well into the UFC's move to ESPN. You also know him from his fantastic podcast, Anik and Florian podcast. He is Jon Anik himself. Jon, welcome back to Submission Radio and congratulations. And also, I mean, of course, we're going to talk about that contract, but let's talk about the big thing right now in the room, that mustache. Tell us about this. Where'd this come from?
Right. I mean, let's not bury the lead.
Yeah, no.
Thank you for having me. No, the neck was getting itchy, and I can't just walk around with nothing on my face. So oftentimes when I'm home, I do go with the mustache. I like to try to scare the other parents at pickup for kindergarten, you know, and this usually does the trick. So, but here we are, you know, maybe someday Craig Borsari and Zach Candido, my bosses, will actually let me rock this mustache on television. We'll see.
Yeah, there needs to be a petition for that. I thought maybe it was something to do with Halloween. I thought you were deep in prep, maybe Freddie Mercury or something. Yeah. Is it part of it at all?
No, and it's certainly not a tribute to Bill Buckner, the former Boston Red Sox GOAT. Of course, the World Series starts tonight. But no, I mean, if I were to rock this on TV, I think I would have some scruff. It wouldn't look as pronounced as it does right now. But at least we can test it out for your massive base of viewers and listeners and see what they think.
Yeah, my mom will be sending feedback to you via email. Let me ask you. You mentioned how you can't rock the mustache on TV without approval. Is that how strict it is? Is that something you'd have to get approved if you go? You couldn't just show up, right? You couldn't just show up with a mustache. You got to show it to the guys first. Make sure the producers don't have a heart attack when they see you on TV.
So one time, May of 2014, I emceed the weigh-in in Cincinnati, Ohio. Main event was Matt Brown and Eric Silva. And I got a text or somebody approached me and said, you're going to have to trim up that beard for tomorrow night. Or maybe it happened after that show. But that was the only time where maybe I pushed that boundary a little bit. So, you know, I got to fall in line, man. I want to keep this job.
That's how you got the reputation for being the UFC's bad boy. That Jon Anik, sometimes the beard is out of control.
Yeah, right.
So you mentioned it, not to bury the lead. Got to ask, we saw that you got an influx of love and kind messages from the MMA community. Now that it's official, man, how does it feel to know that your UFC run will be for at least another 4 years and that the UFC wants to be involved or continue to be involved in the Jon Anik business?
Well, thank you, man. I'm really excited, and this is the only place that I wanted to be, and I think anybody close to me kind of knows that. But when you do go through a contract negotiation, you can't help but have thoughts about what your life would be like without the UFC as a cornerstone, and those were some dark thoughts that I did have as we were going through the process. But sometimes it's hard to know how your bosses value you until you do go through something like this. And thankfully, I'm going to be sticking around. You know, it's still show by show. I mean, we agreed to terms for 4 years, but, you know, it's not like this is a guaranteed 4-year contract like a professional athlete gets. And I do take that part of it seriously. But it's exciting. And ultimately, I was overwhelmed by the support, of course, but you have to have people who believe in you. And I think internally, I've had some supporters that believe that I can do this job on the biggest of shows. And it's an honor to represent this brand. You know, it really is. So thank you, you know, for having me back on. And I'm excited, you know, to get back to work November 3, man, on to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned sort of, I wonder if this is a sense of validation for you, because you mentioned you don't really sometimes know how much you're valued until you go through negotiations like this. Is that something that you sort of found afterwards, that you feel, I guess, a little bit more valued? And also those dark thoughts, man. Tell us about those. What were those like when you were sort of imagining the scenarios?
I guess you try not to let those thoughts get to the front of your mind. But if all of a sudden it comes contract time and the UFC is not interested, and I'm chasing, a high school girls volleyball game, you know what I mean? I mean, you just don't know how things are going to shake out. And obviously, I feel like that wouldn't necessarily have been the case. But no, I just think you have to sort of prepare yourself for the worst case scenario. I mean, it's a tricky business. It really is, especially when you have a family to support. There are a lot of different factors. But I'm just excited, to continue to hit the ground running. And what's interesting about this ESPN deal, and anyone who knows my background knows that it's sort of coming full circle a little bit for me, having started there with my MMA coverage. But we got a lot of work to do, right? Like, I think that's the focus for a lot of us UFC staffers. Like, all right, ESPN committed to 5 years. Let's make them want 10, right? And I think once Bristol, Connecticut and that's where ESPN is if your viewers don't know, but once Bristol sort of gets an appetite for this stuff the way the three of us do, I think we can really, at least domestically in the States, try to get closer to the place where we are globally.
And I know that you're obviously a massive sports fan. How sweet, I mean, the timing of this is perfect. How sweet is it that not only do you get to stay with the UFC, but also go back to ESPN? And I imagine that was a goal sort of at the back of your mind as well, to eventually be back on ESPN. So how does it feel for those two things to kind of come together perfectly and the timing to work out like this?
It's pretty wild, hearing from a lot of guys, producers in Bristol that are now going to be involved in some capacity with the UFC. It's a very cool reality. And I will say, too, as we sort of have one foot out the door with Fox, there are a lot of people at Fox who committed 7 years of their life to the UFC and are very sad to see it go away. Eric Shanks from Fox and everybody else on down. So there is a bittersweet component to this, and I don't want to sort of lose sight of those people, but I mean, this is the worldwide leader in sports. I mean, you guys know, if you hear me, I'm always saying the MMA leader, and I think that is a proud designation for the UFC. This is the worldwide leader in sports, and everything to me sort of goes through Bristol as far as that is concerned, at least in the United States. And the fact that ESPN committed to the entire domestic rights package on TV for the UFC is huge. And candidly, given where we were in 2008 with MMA Live on ESPN.com and later ESPN2, I didn't think 10 years later that things could have swung that much in the other direction in terms of the appeal for ESPN. So hugely exciting. I can't overstate it.
I want to touch on sort of ESPN and sort of UFC's future and that kind of thing. But just on this contract, is there anything notably different about this one? I know it's an extension, but is there anything that any major changes sort of now that you're sort of going into your new run?
No, I mean, not really, and it doesn't mean that we didn't ask for certain things and maybe get certain little things, and I'm not going to go into too many details, but no, I mean, I'll tell you, I'll be candid, which I always try to be. It's not like I have language that says I'm calling every pay-per-view for the next 4 years. I got to earn it at UFC 230, and I think a lot of people, when I say that, they just think it's a throwaway, and it really isn't. Like, if you don't think Dana White would get rid of me after a few successive bad shows, you're crazy. So there's work to be done, and I'm excited. But man, I have a renewed energy for sure. I mean, not to say that you're ever in need of that renewal, but it's just exciting to sort of know where you feel like your immediate future is. And again, there's no company I'd rather work for, and they've really taken great care of me. So I'm a happy man today.
And when I saw you speak about that, sort of you're only as good as your last show, it really got me thinking, because from our perspective, you always do a really good job on all the shows, but have you ever had like a show that didn't quite go your way and where afterwards you were sort of a little bit worried or a little bit upset or felt like your stock was a little bit down after a performance that didn't quite meet your expectation?
Yeah, I mean, you try not to go with the highs and lows too much because Twitter can sort of be an avalanche of hate or love depending on certain moments in the night. I think the worst maybe it was when Ben Rothwell was trying to cap a post-fight interview with a promo, and I followed up with a line of questioning. And actually that night my boss sort of supported my line of thinking, because I think a lot of us were just sort of put off by Rothwell in that moment. And now, of course, I recognize acutely what he was trying to get accomplished. But yeah, man, I mean, I'll be honest with you, like UFC 229, I thought all things considered, we handled much of that night very well, but there were a couple times during that main event where maybe I said some things that I regret. I thought I saw some fatigue in Khabib Nurmagomedov, and it was not an accurate observation. So, there's certain little things all the time, but generally speaking, 13 fights, There's a lot that goes into these shows over 7 hours from a sponsorship standpoint and everything else. All things considered, we try not to beat ourselves up too bad.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes not enough empathy, like with that Rockhold thing. Like, you're on live TV, you're essentially doing an interview, and like, people don't understand when you do interviews. It's like you have half a second to decide. All right, what am I doing? Yeah. Where are we going?
Right.
It's crazy. Can't blame you there.
Well, and I will say with those post-fight interviews, I never script what I'm gonna ask of these guys. Certain things when it comes to divisional structure, you're going to ask and try to sort of get a name from some of these guys. But yeah, I go in there and sort of try to react to the moment. And I guess according to the masses, I didn't react well in that moment. But you got to have thick skin. And, it does bother, I think, my mother and my wife when they see things more than it bothers me at this point in time. I'm just conditioned to it. And I also will say, too, anyone in the public eye, just have a child, right? Because it takes the entire focus off of you. Right? Every little bit of criticism, it's like, I got 3 kids, man, right? So it's like, you could beat me up all you want with words, but I got a lot of actions. Like, I'm glad we're doing this interview right now at 7 p.m. Eastern because I'm getting out of 30 minutes of bedtime, Yeah. Like, that's my reality when I walk away from the screen. So there's a lot of different things in my life that I think help me balance out some of the criticism that inevitably is going to continue to be out there.
We're happy to be of assistance, John, any time. I wanted to ask you, though, just sort of looking at the future of the UFC and obviously them being on ESPN and also ESPN Plus. There's been a lot of discussion lately about sports streaming services with ESPN Plus, the WWE Network, Canelo signing an enormous contract with DAZN, and obviously the landscape generally looking like pay-per-view may potentially soon be phased out. The UFC could sort of be the last ones doing it at one point in a few years. Do you see a time in the not too distant future where, the UFC may even move away from pay-per-view and focus all of its premium content on something like ESPN Plus?
Well, I can almost assure you when that happens, I'll be among the last guys to know, right? Because I do really try to stay in my lane, and I don't even have any informed speculation for you guys on that, to be honest with you. I mean, I can tell you that at least what I've seen from my first quarter schedule for 2019, nothing is going to change from a pay-per-view standpoint. And I still think that these pay-per-view draws come along when you least expect them. Don't tell me Israel Adesanya can't headline a pay-per-view in 2019, right? So there are a lot of different things that play into this, and I think the pay-per-view model in large capacity has worked for the UFC and will continue to, I think, for years to come.
Now, we were talking about UFC 229 before, and we have to touch on the bloody shirt that had the blood stain on it.
So I have it here for you guys because it happened to be in the backdrop here. So, again, if you're audio only, we apologize for this, but I hope that's a decent angle for you. So that is Anthony Showtime Pettis' blood. And I don't know if this does it justice, men, but
it's thick.
We get splattered here and there, right? But this was a blood shower that I can't compare to any other UFC fight that I've called over 7 years, however many hundreds of fights, right? It was raining down on top of us so much so that I could have, 20 milliliters on my back, I mean, it was a tremendous amount of blood, and Joe Rogan made sure to tell the stage manager or whomever, I think the makeup artist, Susie, he's like, don't clean it up. She went to clean it up, and Joe's like, no, leave the blood. We want the blood. But it was, I got back to my room, I opened my backpack, and all my fighter car, it just smelled like rusty blood,
Wow.
But it was incredible, and obviously what a fight. And Tony Ferguson, if he's not the most exciting fighter I've ever seen in there, then I'm not sure who is. But so that obviously is a shirt and a cool memento that we're going to get signed by those guys and give to a good charity hopefully pretty soon here.
So I like how you mentioned that it's Anthony Pettis' blood, not Tony Ferguson's, because between all the craziness, I'm surprised you could tell whose blood apart it is. Do you remember the moment when it happened? How did you know that it was Anthony Pettis' and not Tony's?
That's actually a decent observation out of you. I felt like Pettis was the guy who was in a top position, and it just seemed like his momentum was bringing us to the octagon. But you're right. We should probably double check because Tony's not afraid to bleed in there.
Maury Povich, get him on the case.
Yeah, right.
I just want to see you keep wearing that shirt and just commentating it for the rest of your time in the UFC. And just like, okay, this is the UFC. Just speaking of Tony Ferguson, I'm just curious, John, what do you think should happen with the lightweight picture? Because right now we're in this position where obviously there's a lot of excitement around a possible Khabib-Conor McGregor rematch because it would draw so well on pay-per-view. But at the same time, you got this guy here in Tony Ferguson who looked amazing against Anthony Pettis. And this is a fight between him and Khabib that would draw less pay-per-views, but is a fight that a lot of the hardcore fans and a lot of the casual fans could probably be sold on as well.
Well, and Dana White, you can count him among the hardcore fans that still wants to see this fight. And I think a lot of us were happy to hear him say that he has a willingness to put it together for a fifth time. I will never forget where I was. I was in a minivan going back to the host hotel in Las Vegas. It was 2015, the night Tony Ferguson beat Edson Barboza. And that was the night Joe Silva said, I said, you got to give Ferguson a title shot, right? And he's like, no, I want to make Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov. And that's obviously how long this fight dates. He's been trying to make it since that night. And in Joe's absence, I think hopefully they will make that fight. And I think it's a fight that hopefully the public will support. You know, Khabib definitely moves the needle. And it remains to be seen, I think, the extent to which Tony Ferguson moves the needle. But I think that fight will draw, if they can do it sooner rather than later, and piggyback upon Khabib's win and the aftermath of his win and everything else. But that division's in a great place. And I just think for Tony Ferguson, and you know, obviously he's closer to 40 than he is 30, I believe, at this point in time. If he's 34, I apologize. But the body of work of Tony Ferguson at 155 pounds, historically, hopefully, is going to get a whole lot of credit because, and Khabib's right there with him, of course. I mean, not to discredit him in any capacity, and he's got the belt and has defended it. But Tony Ferguson, right? Well, this is the first guy with double-digit winning streak at 155 pounds. It's 11 now, not to mention the style, right? To win that way and train that hard, that dude, like I like to say, if he's a human being, then I'm a lesser human being. Like, what am I if Tony Ferguson's a human being? You know, he's like a different species. He really is.
I feel like it's like the Men in Black, and we're going to find out it's like actually an alien in a Tony Ferguson mask. The crazy thing was him coming back after that that knee injury so quickly as well. What do you make of Conor McGregor then? And I guess his social media post, he broke down the fight, and then he sort of said that he was open to kind of fighting other people outside of Khabib. What was your reaction to his post, and what would you like to see happen with Conor next?
Well, I really liked the post, and I received a whole lot of criticism for showing support of that post. I certainly understand why some people would interpret it as some excuse-making and maybe not giving Khabib's performance enough credit. But what I liked about it was the fact that he was very candid about his preparation, and I'm surprised at some of the deficiencies in that preparation. You know, one thing that I have always said, and it's not just a talking point, is that Conor McGregor leaves no stone unturned when it comes to preparation. And maybe even though he put in the hours this time, he didn't properly use his time, as he said. I also just like generally that he is willing to fight who's next in line right now. I always thought he would come back to this game for the love of the game, and that's why we led the pay-per-view with that line, you know, and that is why he is back ultimately to prove himself in the greatest mixed martial arts setting on earth. And whether it's Dustin Poirier or Jose Aldo at 55 or whoever, you know, Nate Diaz, I mean, there are many different fights for Conor McGregor, and I think the timeline is the most interesting component to it all. You know, does he want to turn around first quarter 2019 and keep this thing going as he seemed to intimate in the post, or are we going to have to wait 6 or 8 months? I guess time will tell.
By the way, you had arguably one of, if not the best seats in the house for the post-fight actions between Khabib and Conor and the whole brawl and everything. And I think, you know, as a commentator, you handled it very well. But what was sort of, I guess, going on in your mind at that moment, and where does that rank as far as crazy and interesting career moments as a commentator? It's not something that happens every day, and I guess it's just so wild because it's something that you can't really ever prepare for. I'm sure that doesn't come in your show notes when you rock up to the booth on the day.
No, I mean, that certainly trumps anything else. I think what was most memorable for me over 6 or 7 years was probably that main event between Mark Hunt and Bigfoot Silva in Brisbane, Australia in December of 2013.
Wow.
But this was the biggest fight in UFC history, and it was the biggest sporting event that I had ever called in my life by far. And then lo and behold, towards the end of it, you go from calling that fight to calling a brawl. And I think that was sort of my biggest challenge was, you know, do I call the brawl? And I just called the brawl until I was told to do otherwise, right? So I think we all in the truck at the broadcast table were thinking, you know, how are we to handle this moment? And I just kind of called the fight and what I was seeing in front of my eyes. Of course, we missed certain things, obviously, because we were panned to Khabib when Conor and a lot of that action was happening in front of us. But right as I panned, I saw Zubair Tukhugov land on Conor, right? So that's how I called it. I didn't see Conor throw. So it was a crazy night, and getting texts from Daniel Cormier about maybe things that I said about Khabib. It was just, it's a night I'll never forget. I didn't sleep. It was, and they were more good than bad, obviously, but it was just total bananas. And I'm excited one day to go back and sort of rewatch every minute of it, but I have not done that yet.
Yeah, I bet. You mentioned you called the fight until you were told to do otherwise. Was there a point where, someone in the back in the UFC were like, all right, no more talking about the brawl. We need to sort of move on to something else?
Well, they panned up, right? So they went wide and came off the brawl, and then Dominic Cruz intervened and said, this is not something that we're going to endorse. And I can't remember if that came from the truck or not, but I think we all saw the visual of them no longer giving it, that play-by-play type of coverage. And once they did that, we kind of moved off and hustled our way off the air pretty quickly, as you may recall.
I mean, Daniel Cormier, he's fighting next week, and I want to quickly get your thoughts on New York, but you mentioned he texted you. What kind of stuff was he saying to you in the text?
Well, I think maybe he thought we shortchanged Khabib a little bit during the broadcast, and again, he's one of my best friends, and again, there's always sort of a turn up of the grin a little bit when we go back and forth texting or talking, but I called him right away, just wanted to see exactly what he meant, and I think maybe at times during the brawl he felt like we weren't maybe interjecting some things about Conor that we should have. But, of course, as you guys just heard, I didn't see anything, right? Yeah. I didn't see what Conor did until several hours later. It was just total chaos, But I'm excited for Daniel, obviously, coming up in a few weeks. And it's just crazy to me that he's fighting November 3rd, man. It really is crazy. And we'll see what Derrick can do with the opportunity. I think Derrick Lewis, I think he's got a real shot. I think he's going to put himself in position to be in really good shape and really focused, and we'll see how it goes for him early. Just got to avoid that ground.
And he just keeps making these crazy comebacks. I feel like a lot of people looking at this as DC's fight, and I don't blame them for it, but Derrick Lewis has sort of made a career of these crazy comebacks. It's obviously a ballsy ballsy move on DC's part as well, because obviously stepping in against a guy with that kind of reputation and with this Brock Lesnar payday sort of looming. But if you had it your way, John, would you rather see DC take on Brock Lesnar next for the big payday or Jon Jones for a third time? What sort of tickles your fancy more?
Well, I think I would like to see the Jon Jones Cormier fight. I know for Daniel, he wants to realize that Lesnar payday, and they're both big paydays, right? It's hard to quantify, honestly, for me, which one is the bigger one, and maybe some fans would say, assuredly, it's the Lesnar one. I'm not so sure. But I think Daniel would love to get that Jon Jones fight back. It doesn't seem like Jon has too much of an appetite for it, but I'm glad you're giving DC some credit for accepting this fight, because even though he's a massive betting favorite, if I'm crafting a fighter to beat Daniel Cormier, 1 or 1A in terms of attributes I'm looking for is heart. Like, you have to have heart because when you're fighting DC, it just makes for a suffocating night at the office. So Derrick Lewis does have heart, right, and has survived a lot of really bad rounds and bad positions when you think he's done. He just seems to have that will. He is very strong. Obviously, he has that throwback, break your face open type of power, and DC's going to make a lot of money for sure, but I just think that there is a huge amount of risk, and he has managed risk very well in his career. But there's risk here for Daniel Cormier that I'm not sure is reflected in the current betting line, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you hear Derrick Lewis talk about his preparation for the fight and how poorly, how much of a weight cut he has to have and how much it affects his fighting and how he's actually looking to get on a diet now that he's making a bit more money. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of Derrick Lewis gets into that octagon. Just quickly, as we let you go, John, his arch nemesis, DC's arch nemesis, Jon Jones, he's coming back against Alexander Gustafsson. Just want to quickly get your thoughts. What do you think Jon Jones has to do to sort of rebuild, I suppose, that fan base and, sort of get some of that some of the fans talking about his fighting more now than sort of some of his extracurricular activities outside? And what do you think it'll take to sort of get him back to the place that he once was when everybody thought he was pound for pound the best fighter in the world?
It's a good question. And honestly, I think he just needs to make that famed walk to the octagon and fight, right? He's Michael Jordan as far as I'm concerned, right? There have been transgressions. Obviously, he has left untold millions on the table, maybe $40 or $50 million at career's end he will have left on the table when you add everything up. But, man, I mean, there's no walk to the octagon in mixed martial arts like Jon Jones. That's forgetting the fact that he's the greatest fighter that most of us have ever seen, skill for skill, and also the fact that his coaches say after every one of his fights that he's showing you 15, 20% of what he can do. Of course, the one fight that he really had to dig deep was the Gustafsson fight, and this is another fight that I think could be closer on paper, but Jon Jones is infectious. You guys see it when he walks to the octagon. He is smiling ear to ear. That's the only place in the world that he wants to be, and I just think that he has to let his fighting do the talking, and I'd love to see him be active and fight twice in 7 months. I don't know how realistic that is, but it's a huge challenge against Gustafsson, man, and I don't know that he's ever looked better than he did against Glover Teixeira, but long layoff for both guys, and hopefully everybody stays healthy. That's always first and foremost, but it'll be exciting to have Johnny Bones back, and we'll see if he can pick up where he left off, you know?
Absolutely. Jon, we could talk to you all day and all night, but we don't want to be too greedy with your time. Always fun chatting with you. Of course, your next assignment is going to be UFC 230. We'll be there as well, so that's going to be fun.
Oh, great.
We'll be looking forward to your excellent work as always. Congratulations on the contract extension. Very happy for you, not just for you, but for the family. I'm sure everybody's sort of feeling relieved and happy about that. Of course, guys, don't forget to follow the man on Twitter and Instagram at Jon_Anik. And of course, check out the podcast, Anik and Florian podcast. If you're not doing that, not really sure what you're doing with your life. Jon, again, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the time.
You guys are the best, man. Always a pleasure. Just sorry about the mustache. We'll clean it up for the next appearance.
Always appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
Have a great
Thank
night,
you.
Jon.
Thank
Bye.
you, guys.
Thank you, Jon. Take care. Bye-bye. And there you guys go. Jon Anik. Happy to see him sign on to this 4-year contract extension. And Cass, I'm always fascinated to hear him talk about the stuff behind the scenes, especially with the whole thing of like nothing's really guaranteed and you got to go from show to show. And I think a part of that is kind of him keeping himself motivated to be the best Jon Anik he can be. And then a part of that just shows the work ethic that he's got, that no matter what, arguably being at the top level of the game in his profession, he's always looking at every event and always looking to improve. So some inspirational stuff from him. Of course, him and Kenny Florian have a fantastic podcast, so you guys should have a listen to that, and I can't wait to see him in New York next week. Now, as we wrap up, a couple of quick Timothy Johnson mustache reviews for all the people at home. We're going to keep it super quick today. The first one is For a Star Is Born with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, as I like to call him, Brad Cooper.
Big Coops.
Big Coops. If he was an Aussie, we would call him Coopsy.
There was a guy at my birthday on Friday night, by the way, who was a spitting image of Bradley Cooper. And he was out of his mind. He looked like he was hatching harebrained schemes. Out of his mind? Is that how you would describe him? Or maybe you didn't see him. Oh, I think it was before you came down.
I think I missed him,
He was out of his mind. Yeah. But he looked exactly like Bradley Cooper. It was scary.
Well, I will say it was a gutsy effort by him. A Star Is Born, directed by him and Lady Gaga. Apparently, he gave Gaga what she needed when it came to acting. She gave him what he needed when it came to singing. It was a movie this is, I think, the 4th remake of this movie. Look, just very, very quickly, I think Bradley Cooper was really good in this movie. I think Lady Gaga did quite well for someone who's not obviously known for her acting. I feel like this movie's overrated. It's like 90% Rotten Tomatoes, 8.3 out of 10 on IMDb, and now Facebook has ratings for movies, and it's on 4.9, which is weird. Because Facebook hates everything. Basically, to me, with movies, sometimes you get into this pattern where you want to over-dramatize things so you can win an Oscar. And to me, that kind of happened in this movie. I think they could have reduced some of the bullshit and made the movie more streamlined. It would have helped the storyline. The first half of the movie, fantastic. The second half of the movie is where the horse leaves the stable. And as Don Fry experienced once or twice in his horse riding career, hard to get back that horse once you get there. I would have to say it's an enjoyable movie. I'm a little bit disappointed. A bit heartbreaking at the end, a little bit over the top, a little bit extra, as the kids say, at the end. I looked around the room, which I always do when I watch a movie, not because I'm a pervert, but because I want to see what people's emotions are in their eyes, and there were a lot of people crying.
Oh, wow.
When I was watching the movie, there was a guy who was breathing loudly out of his nose to my right. He was one seat over. And they were trying to sing, and all I could hear was...
Oh, no.
What kind of made it worse was there were a couple of seats down the end of the aisle that he could have moved to and sort of breathed loudly on his own. So because of that guy,
breathe elsewhere, asshole. Is that what you
breathe elsewhere, asshole is basically what I was thinking throughout the movie. And as you know, Cass, I do have a history of turning around and getting people to act right in movie theaters. But what could I do? He's stuck with a stuffy nose. That what am I going to bring him? Some kind of decongestant? Am I going to go get some Otrivin from the pharmacy and recommend that he spray it in his nose, otherwise I throw him out of the theater? Those thoughts did cross my mind, but I didn't do it. But anyway.
Be like Bas Rutten in the men's room. Just slit his throat and just put him out of his own misery. Go into the naked man.
The thoughts did cross my mind. So I'm going to give this movie 3 out of 5. I think Bradley Cooper did a good job. I think Lady Gaga was a little bit extra in some scenes. I think the singing was good. The soundtrack was fantastic. The ending was a little bit over the top. I think he could have modified it, could have changed it, could have switched up the script a little bit and made the movie sort of finish on a more intelligent note. But yeah, 3 out of 5, definitely not a 5 out of 5, but something that people can check out. If you're a big dog fanatic and you get sad easily, the ending is pretty heartbreaking. So there's that there. And then quickly, so that's Timothy Johnson mustaches for everybody at home. That's lost count. 3 out of 5 Timothy Johnson mustaches. And mind you, the other week Casper gave a -5, I believe,
for Venom.
Timothy Johnson mustaches. So that is still the record for the worst Timothy Johnson mustache rating ever. And just quickly, Bad Times at the El Royale. I did watch this movie as well. Director Drew Goddard. I got to just quickly say, to me, I know a lot of people really dig this movie. I saw people say, oh, it's fantastic. I really love the plot. To me, this movie made no sense. It went for ages. It goes for ages, this movie. I felt like I lost a part of my life that I'm never going to get back. 2 hours and 22 minutes. I mean, come on, guys. Can we cut it down a bit? It's got an all-star cast. An all-star cast. I mean, when I go through this cast right here.
Just quickly, 2 hours, 22 minutes, all-star cast. Sounds like an episode of Submission Radio.
Yeah, there it is. That's it. 2 hours, 22 minutes, plus factor in the half an hour of movie previews that just absolutely destroys my soul. Chris Hemsworth, Dakota Johnson, John Hamm, Jeff Bridges are some of the people that are in this movie. But to me, this plot was absolutely stupid. They lost the movie halfway through. It's on 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. One of the many times that Rotten Tomatoes has failed to inform us with a proper score. I will give it 1 out of 5.
Oh, wow. That bad.
It's absolutely terrible. The movie was lost on me. I didn't get the plot at the end, and you just felt like a part of your life was taken. Get Liam Neeson. You felt like you were going to call Liam Neeson up to try and get that 2 hours and 22 minutes back into your life because it was taken. And mind you, that's a better Taken plot than most of the Taken movies lately. So it was brutal. I don't recommend anybody watch it. And if you do watch it, maybe watch it from the comfort of your own home where you can sort of do things around this 2 hour and 22 minute disaster that is Bad Times.
Wash your car, cook a roast, do things while the movie plays in the background.
I'll tell you what, you can get a lot of stuff done. And Chris Hemsworth, he played this guy called Billy Lee Cass, which was this sort of cult leader. It was supposed to be a bit edgy, a bit different. He was playing Thor all this time. I guess he was trying to sort of break himself out of that area and sort of get himself out of that typecast area. But I have to say, to me, I think he did pretty badly in that role. I mean, a lot of people might have thought that he did well, but to me, he did terrible. It kind of looked like, to me, Chris Hemsworth just trying to be different and going out of his way to be different, but actually just being Thor in a different outfit. So for Chris, he's going to have to work hard to get out of that sort of typecast situation and get a role that he can actually build some steam in. This definitely is not it. Bad Times at the El Royale. The name sort of says it all. 1 Timothy Johnson mustache cast.
Oh, wow. That was snarky. That was like extra snarky and sassy. And I think at the end of this review, it becomes clear that Chris Hemsworth will have to fight his way to earn a spot on Submission Radio, not for the time being. I also sent you a picture of that Bradley Cooper looking guy. It's probably on your phone right now, so I don't know. If you want to have a look at that, get a real-time reaction. If not, that's totally fine.
I won't reaction. Here we go.
I won't be offended. He's got a wild eye look at his
face. Wow, that guy. Jesus. Let me see if I can get it up to the screen here. There it is.
Show everyone this lunatic.
Imagine he's a listener, a Submission Radio listener.
Then I'd feel bad.
I'll tell you what, looking like Bradley Cooper is not a slight. I wish I could look like him from time to time. Yeah. The guy doesn't act, and he's a great actor. So good on you, Bradley Cooper looking guy. That crazy looking eyes. Maybe he should have had Lady Gaga's role in the movie. Maybe it would have been better. Who knows? I'd love to see him and Bradley Cooper sing to each other. That would be fantastic. And just quickly, on Bradley Cooper, he's 43 years old. How about that? Unbelievable.
I didn't know that. I thought he was older.
Oh, wow.
Nah. 43 looking like that. Good for him. Respect. Much respect. Yeah. Anyway.
Dave Chappelle's in the movie.
Dave Chappelle, what, sorry?
Dave Chappelle is in the movie. It's crazy. Anyway.
Wow, I didn't know that. And it won't sell me enough to you know what? I like Dave Chappelle when he's doing stand-up, and I don't care about anything else. Live and Fillmore. That's the best.
Con Air. It's good.
Yeah, that's... Oh, yes, of course. Forgot all about that. That's right.
There's some other movies, for sure.
As we wrap up, just a quick thank you to all our guests, Luke Rockhold, Colby Covington, Jon Anik, and you guys, of course, for listening. Big ups if you've made it this far. Drop the comments in the comment section below. Fun times. We love chatting with you guys in the YouTube comments. It is my crack. It is the thing I look forward to the most after a new episode comes out. Dennis, any final words?
Yeah, catch us from New York next week. Of course, the YouTube channel is where the content is going to be. No official show on the Stitcher iTunes, so jump on there for all your post-show, pre-show breakdowns, and all that kind of stuff in between. Like us on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram for all the behind-the-scenes of what's going on over there. And like Casper said, drop your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of the movies? What did you think of the fights? What did you think of the interviews? We love to read your comments.
What are you wearing for Halloween? We want to know that as well.
Yeah, and what should we wear for Halloween? Give us some suggestions. I still don't know what I'm going to do. We'll see you guys from the Big Apple next week.